Welcome to Manna-Fest, hosted by international evangelist, teacher, and author Perry Stone. Enjoy unique insight into prophetic and practical truth. It's time to feast on fresh manna, so get ready to be blessed and encouraged. And now, here is your host and teacher, Perry Stone.
Some would call it a conspiracy. Others say it's not a conspiracy, it's something that simply is well planned, that has been there for quite some time, and all it took was the right people in the right places globally to begin to make it happen and to enact it. Today on Manna-Fest, I have a very important message. It might be one of the most important messages about America that we presented this year. And we're going to show you how there is a group of elitists attempting to reform the United States of America, or reform what I call the Great American Empire. Now, there have been books written on this, and I won't go into the detail about the books or what they say, but there appears to be about 300 families that are involved with banking, that are involved with distribution of food, that own the large ships, the oil tankers or whatever, but there's 300 families. Some of them live in America, Canada, Mexico, South America, some are from China, and these 300 families basically own the entire world, and they do a lot of it through the banking system. 300 what we call elitist families. Now, you would think that people who have a lot of money would be happy with simply having their money. But with money comes power. And there is a spirit, just like there's a spirit of greed that can connect itself to a lot of money if a person's not careful. There is a spirit of power, a desire for raw power that some of these individuals have. So they're not happy with just owning the corporations, the businesses, and the banking industry. They want power to control the minds of the people and the lives of the people. Now, this is not some kind of conspiracy theory. It's very obvious. When you study 8 to 10 hours a day the way I do every day, and I read all sorts of newspapers, news reports, and articles from around the world, you can see it very clearly. Now, the one thing that frightens the elitist, and I'm even talking about the elitist in America, is a grassroots movement of people in America that want to restore the Constitution, the power of the Constitution to the United States, that want to put God back in the things that we have every day, God that has been removed from public places. These individuals frighten them. They want you to think in their news reports that they are ignorant, uneducated, dumb, because if you believe that, you would never listen to what they have to say. But these individuals frighten them. And thankfully, there is a movement raising up in America, a youth movement, movements in churches, movements in local regions, to take the nation back from the hands of a small group of people who want to control it and rebuild it their way, which is more of a communistic, socialist type of government. Now, what I want to show you today is very, very significant. All kingdoms of the world and all empires operate off of 7 things. And I'm going to put this list up on the screen. They are the needs of every human being. A human being is a body, soul, and spirit, so there's certain needs. Number 1, the need for a religion. The need for money, number 2. Number 3, the need for education. Number 4, the need of health care. Number 5, the need for food. Number 6 is the need for protection, and that can come through the military, of course. And number 7 is the need for information. Now, education and information are pretty much parallel there, but you will understand in a moment why I put the word information down there. Now, listen carefully. Any person who can control all 7 of these either becomes a savior in the eyes of the people or can become a dictator eventually. Now, let me say it again. Any person that controls all 7, religion, money, education, health care, food, protection, information, if you can control those 7, you either will become a savior in the eyes of the people if you can help them with all 7, or if you control all 7, you can become a dictator. Now, I want to show you something here that Jesus proved that He was the master of humanity. He was the master of mankind. You ready? Because Jesus influenced all 7 of these. All right? First of all, religion. Christ instituted a new religion. I don't even like to call Christianity religion because a religion means a search for God. I mean, through Christ, you don't search, you find. But let's just say it as secular people would look at it. Jesus Christ started a new religion. Number two, he was the master educator. Never a man spake like this man. With authority he commanded spirits to come out. Number three, he was the master over money. He taught a lot about money and finances, but he also told Peter to go fishing and get the gold coin out of the fish's mouth. So he was the master of money. Number four, we know that when it came to health care, Jesus was the master physician. Healed the blind, the lame, the deaf, raised the dead. Master physician. He could control the health care of people by healing them and making them well. Number five, he was the master of food. Now, I told you, food is one of those 7 things that if a person controls, they can either become a savior, if they're helping people who are starving, or a dictator if they control the distribution of it. But Jesus multiplied the bread and fed the poor with it, and so he became a savior in the eyes of the people when it came to the making and distribution of food. Number 6, Christ was the master over the media. Now, what do I mean by master over the media? Because his fame spread abroad, and every time they lied about him, he knew how to counter it. Every time they accused him of being of the devil, he would throw it right back in their face. So he knew how to deal with not a printed paper, not a television program or a radio program, but he knew how to deal with back then everything traveled by word of mouth. So he knew how to put a stop to those things that were being said about him that were lies. And finally, Christ is the captain of the heavenly army. He's called the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. So he is the king of a heavenly army, so therefore he's the master of the armies of the world. Now, people wanted to, don't miss this. When Jesus was living on earth, people wanted to make him a king, and the Roman Empire became afraid of him because he was unable to control those things to prove that he was the master of humanity. And so they wanted to make him king. It was not time for him to be king. And of course, he suffered as the Messiah, went to heaven, is coming back again, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Now, listen to me carefully. So Jesus is the Savior in the fact that he can control those 7. But what about people on earth in the past who have tried to control those 7 things? What happens when the wrong person tries to control? Okay, look at the communist revolution. Let's look at this. They took over religion and they made communism an atheistic religion. In other words, they took Russia before the communist revolution had churches and freedom of religion, and then when the revolution took place, they started arresting pastors, preachers, burning Bibles, etc. Okay, communism took control of religion. Communism took control of the educational systems there in Russia, all the schools. Number 3, they took control of the banks. Number 4, they took control of the hospitals, the doctors, and the medicine. Number 5, they seized the farms and the farmers and put them in the control of the state. They controlled all of the military and built their own military, which was from 1917 onward to about 1990 was a communist form of military. Still is, by the way, in some areas. And they also controlled, this is important, they controlled the media, which means that the communists were able to control the propaganda. A man told me a story because his mother came out of Russia. She was a Jewish lady and was able to come out of Russia. But when the communists took over, one of the things they did to trick the minds of the children, because they knew they had to win the minds of the younger generation in order for them to be pro-communist, is the kids would be hungry and they would say, pray to God for food, pray to God. So they'd all bow their head and pray to God, nothing would happen. They would say, now pray to Father Stalin. Father Stalin would provide food. And they would pray to Father Stalin, who's the communist leader, and then they'd bring in carts of apples and candy and everything, and they'd feed the kids. So the kids started thinking that their supply came, watch this, not from God, but from government. Did you hear that? The kids began to think that their supply came not from God, but from government. And so communism was successful because they went into the younger generation and began to brainwash them in that doctrine. Hitler did the same thing. Hitler used an economic crisis in Germany to gain power. And the thing was, he blamed the economic crisis on Jewish bankers, and that's one of the reasons why that the Nazis and the German people had an animosity toward the Jews, because Hitler was blaming the pre-crisis before he came to power, where it took a wheelbarrow full of German marks just to buy a loaf of bread years before he ever came to power. He blamed that on the Jewish bankers, and so that's the reason, that's one reason I should say, why the Nazis and some of the German people said nothing when the Jewish people were put in the concentration camps. But let's go off of that and come back here. Hitler used a crisis to gain power. He gained control of the educational system. You've probably seen the old pictures, we'll show you one here, of the major book burnings that they had in Germany. Number 2, he organized the Nazi Party through the Third Reich and then controlled a huge, massive army. He controlled the media. This is important. Hitler had a propaganda minister, and the propaganda minister took over newspapers, radio, and media to ensure that, now listen, to ensure that any report coming out about Hitler and the Nazi Party was always in a positive light. Nothing, if Hitler did anything bad, it would never make the paper, never make the radio.